Welcome to Security Shorts, where each episode takes a quick look at a trending data security topic. I'm Noah Yosef, Senior Security Strategist at Imperva, and in this video, we will examine one of the topmost database threats, SQL injection. SQL injection is one of the most common attack types in web-connected databases. And although we associate SQL injection with an external hacker, a malicious insider can also exploit vulnerabilities prone to SQL injection attacks. The definition of a SQL injection is where an attacker inserts an unauthorized SQL statement through an SQL data channel. Data channel examples include parameters of stored procedures or a web form, while this simply occurs due to non-validated input parameters by the application. SQL injections are one of the most prominent threats today in order to directly retrieve data from databases. As you can see from the pie chart, SQL injections top the attack discussions on hacker forums. In the past, bots were mainly written to flood a website in order to cause a denial of service. Today, many bots are also in use to probe web applications for SQL injection vulnerabilities. Toolkits and templates exist for hackers to carry out their attacks. This screenshot in particular presents one of the many hacker tools which exist to automate SQL injection attacks. All the attacker needs is to provide the URL to attack, the type of database, and click Go. As you can see, in merely a few seconds, the attacker can carry out any full-fledged SQL injection campaign. How does a hacker perform a SQL injection attack? Let's go ahead and view a demo. Here is a portal application called SuperVita. This is an in-house application used for demonstrations. This portal is very similar to any shopping portal you're used to. You can buy books, CDs, movies, and so forth. To log in, you need to supply your credentials. However, this part of the application contains a SQL injection vulnerability, which allows a malicious hacker to exploit. So rather than inserting a credential, the hacker inserts a SQL statement which is interpreted as true, such as 1 equals 1. And voila, there it is. The user is logged in as Mickey. As mentioned, SQL injection does not necessarily need to be performed via the web. Stored procedures and built-in functions may be susceptible to SQL injection, allowing a low-privileged user to exploit database vulnerabilities to gain administrative privileges. Take, for example, a software developer in a bank. By manipulating stored procedures vulnerable to SQL injection, he can gain excessive privileges and grant himself DBA rights. Once he has these rights, he can turn off database auditing, create bogus accounts, and transfer funds. To demonstrate such an attack, let's look at a vulnerability in Oracle 8 where this scenario became a concrete threat. Here we see a local Oracle client, SQL Plus, connecting to the server. The user connects with the credential Scott Tiger. These are actually Oracle's default credentials, mainly used for testing purposes, where Scott is a low-privileged user. So user Scott is now logged in. Before we proceed, let's just note that this issue is now fixed. Now Scott, the low-privileged user, tries to select username from a sensitive table. The server returns an error that the table or view does not exist. Between us, this table does exist, but only a high-privileged user should be able to access it. A low-privileged user, such as Scott, should not even be aware of the existence of such a table, which is why we see the error. But as you're just about to see, in Oracle 8 there was a built-in stored procedure vulnerable to SQL injection. The stored procedure receives a SQL statement as a parameter. The malicious user, logged in as Scott, requires DBA privileges. This procedure, not to be accessed by a low-privileged user such as Scott, returns an error. However, and here's the security glitch, the backend statement was executed before testing the privileges of the caller of the procedure. In other words, the database already went ahead and granted DBA privileges to Scott. And now Scott, as a DBA, has full access to that sensitive table. There you have it, the complete list of username and passwords. How do we mitigate SQL injection attacks? First, we require more granular access control lists. We're looking at query access control lists. These define the operations a user is allowed to perform against a certain table. Let's take a look at these query ACLs. As an example, we have a simple login similar to our demo in which the web application verifies the user credentials. Under normal usage, the values for the username and password should be inserted in the placeholders for the SQL query. However, in the case of a SQL injection, the query to the database would also contain the additional clause 1 equals 1, which always validates as true. We would want our protection mechanism to identify this additional clause. ACLs should be updated automatically. This could be done by learning the application, what's normal usage behavior and what's not. This process should be dynamic in order to continuously monitor the application behavior and adapt to application changes. Finally, the solution should monitor the access to vulnerable objects and correlate this access against the access control lists to block inappropriate usage. The consequence of a SQL injection attacks are obvious: access to unauthorized data manipulation, denial of service, and privilege elevation. We saw how a minor breach, just an old forgotten code for instance, becomes a major incident, and for which the built-in access controls become ineffective. Yet, an effective solution would have included query access control lists, which learns the behavior of the application and can alert on any suspicious deviation. This completes this episode of Security Shorts. Please join us in one of our online communities or LinkedIn groups for direct access to key data security discussions. Thank you.